The following contains information from the Purdue University Fellowship Office for prospective graduate students. Fellowships are important to your graduate funding, and today we're going to cover some basic information on what to expect from fellowships, as well as resources for how to apply, and also two resources that my office has available for enrolled current graduate students. So fellowships are a specific type of grant that helps fund a graduate student's tuition and stipend during their graduate program. Now, the fellowships are typically research-based, meaning that they require the applicant to be in a thesis-based master's or PhD program. These sorts of programs are research-based in the sense that students typically have to submit a thesis, and conducting research is very normal for these students. Very few fellowships are available for students who are not in research-based graduate programs. Fellowships are very advantageous for graduate students because they provide a stipend or a salary, and they usually cover tuition or a part of tuition, as well as insurance for the individual. In contrast, you may be familiar with scholarships, but scholarships are smaller awards that provide one lump sum amount to the individual. Of course, money is always good, but fellowships are really the best way to look into graduate funding because scholarships are not as plentiful, and fellowships provide much more funding, typically over a much longer time period. So why apply for fellowships? Of course, obviously, in addition to the potential money that you might get from it, it's important to work on your grant writing skills, especially as you're starting your graduate program. It's a good time to get used to research-based writing, where you write a proposal that encourages the funding for your project. Now, grant writing, which essentially is what you use for fellowship applications, will follow you throughout your research career. So therefore, the earlier you gain experience with grant writing, the better that is. Your application experience can be added to your resume or CV, and oftentimes individuals who write fellowship applications end up having a very nice plan for conducting their research. So this is a win-win situation. Even though the funding is very helpful, even if you do not receive a fellowship, the process of applying is still greatly important to you. Something to keep in mind is that the timing of applying for a fellowship matters. Fellowships typically take at least 6 to 9 months just to review your application and get back to you on whether you earned the award. In general, most graduate fellowships have application deadlines between October and March. So it's good to look at the deadlines and check eligibility early on and plan for these things in advance. Typically, fellowship applications require approximately 1 to 3 months of preparation. These applications are not something that you can throw together in one weekend. Of course, letters of recommendation, transcripts are required, as well as extensive writing on your research planning. So typically, competitive applications require the applicant to just plan it out in advance and get feedback from the research advisor, as well as the fellowship office. Now, of course, approximately 1 year after you submit your application, you will learn if you gain the funding. And typically there's a 2 to 4 month gap in between being awarded the funding and actually having the fellowship funding start. And then fellowships typically provide funding either between half a year up to 3 or even 4 or 5 years. So you look at this timeline, and then it's pretty clear that the earlier you start applying to fellowships, the better. Because if you wait to request fellowship funding until the semester you need it, there simply is not enough time for these external organizations to review your application and award you funding. So therefore, it's great to think at least 1 full year in advance. It is also beneficial to consider which fellowships you can apply to later on in your graduate program so that you can apply for those later on as well. So along with the timing, it's important to note that there are various different types of fellowships. For graduate students, there's commonly pre-doctoral fellowships and dissertation fellowships. Pre-doctoral fellowships are very common for first and second year master's and PhD students. These fellowships involve applying for 1 to 3 years of funding, typically to finish off either a master's or a PhD program, or to get you started in a PhD program. So these are the main things to look into as you're starting your graduate career. However, predoctoral fellowships might not always be called predoctoral. Sometimes they're simply called fellowship or award, but the predoctoral designation means that the funding goes towards the middle or the start of your master's or PhD program. In contrast, dissertation fellowships are also very helpful to obtain. However, dissertation fellowships fund only the final year of your PhD. Dissertation fellowships do require you to apply in advance, following that 1-year rule I just mentioned. But it's good to have these on your radar to know which dissertation fellowships you can apply to as you enter your second to last year of your PhD. Additionally, you should be aware that there's also another type of fellowship called a postdoc fellowship. Postdoc fellowships typically are things that you would apply to during your final year of your PhD program to request funding for a postdoctoral research term. Now, postdoctoral terms can range anywhere from a year to 3, 4, or even 5 years, depending on your academic discipline. And these are periods of time after you've completed your PhD, where you typically conduct guided mentored research under a faculty member. This is just something to be aware of, especially during your final year of PhD. However, where you are now, it's good to keep in mind the search for predoctoral fellowships. Now, there are several fellowship search tools available online. These come from many government sources, as often government-funded fellowships provide funding during the start or after the first year of your PhD or master's program. I recommend that you look into stemgraduatestudents.science.gov, search across various government agencies for opportunities. And additionally, even if you're not in a traditional STEM field, oftentimes these sources will have information on social sciences and health and behavioral sciences as well. So if your research is STEM adjacent or involves statistical analyses, you can find opportunities here too. Along with that, national laboratories post their internships and fellowships at various levels at this site called Z-Intellect. Z-Intellect lists many opportunities of different levels and different qualifications. You can find opportunities that are both open to domestic and international graduate students here as well. Along with that, pathwaystoscience.org is a nonprofit organization that helps combine different opportunities for you. You can search by your citizenship, your area of interest, and if you're a master's or PhD student. This can be a great site to check on at various times during the year because it is very seasonal in regards to which opportunities are posted. So, as I told you this quick overview of resources and information, I also encourage you to look at the Purdue Fellowship Office website. Here we have our own listing of external fellowships across various disciplines, as well as explanations on how Purdue internal fellowships are administered, and resources to find out more information on fellowships here at Purdue. Along with that, we do offer a lot of resources to our enrolled current graduate students. Now, of course, as a prospective student, you don't have access to these, but I want to make you aware that we do offer a plethora of resources for students here at Purdue. My office provides writing consultations, fellowship webinars, a grant writing class, as well as a wiki page, that has presentation slides, templates, and a lot of advice for how to apply and be competitive for fellowship applications. Thank you for listening to this video. Feel free to check out our website for more information.